Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Ralph Ruffalo, longtime supporter of Kenosha and former owner of Southport Rigging. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
When did your family come to Kenosha?
My grandfather, my dad's father, came in 1906 when he was 14 years old from Cosenza, Italy. He came all by himself, but I guess he knew some people from Cosenza. That's what brought him to Kenosha.
Okay, and what did he do?
He worked at Simmons Mattress Company for all of his adult life. I don't know what he did in that period of time, but maybe they hired people that young. Yeah. I don't know. But he had a family of 7. He married a French-Canadian gal, and they made their home here in Kenosha.
And how did he get to work?
He rode his bicycle. He never did get a driver's license, and he never learned how to read English. So he rode his bicycle everywhere. And I think the family rode bikes also, or got along, with public transportation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what did your dad do?
My dad worked his whole adult life, more than 50 years, for Triangle Appliance, which his brother started.
All right, and how did he get to decide on that as a career?
So he was in World War II as well as his brother was. His brother was almost 10 years older. His brother was a gunner in the Air Force, and I believe he was shot down during the war and spent about 1.5 years in a prisoner of war camp in Italy. And when he was released, he got a pot of money for his time in the prisoner of war camp, and him and Mort Hennock and one of the Lip brothers started Triangle Appliance. And it used to be downtown, actually, on that little triangular spot on the south side of Kenosha.
The downtown area?
Yeah, but it wasn't called Triangle for that reason. And it wasn't called Triangle because there was 3 guys.
Why was it called Triangle?
I never did get the correct answer, but it said, I was told it was neither of those. But at any rate, when after the war, I think they started the business in 1947. It's still going today. And my dad had gone into the service, and he only served stateside. The war ended before he got deployed anywhere, and he went to work in the beginning delivering appliances and doing some service work for his brother, and then shortly after he became a sales guy and ended up being the top sales guy and more the manager.
Okay, what else was he involved in?
So my dad was one of the charter members of the Kiwanis Club of Western Kenosha, and Kiwanis Club does a lot of different things for the city, but my dad and Heine Keene and Regner and Dr. Regner started the Koharama, and I believe they ran that for almost 25 years. Very successful event in Kenosha.
Okay, and what did you do after high school?
I enrolled at UW Parkside. My class, 1969 class, was the first class of young men who got a lottery number for the draft in the Vietnam War. I got a pretty high lottery number, so I didn't really go to college for that reason, but I wanted to go to college. And I enrolled in the engineering program there. And I spent 2.5 years going to Parkside. and then I dropped out a semester and just worked, and then enrolled in Madison.
Okay, so what did you do while you attended Parkside?
Well, one of the things I did, I learned how to sail sailboats, and I crewed down at different boats at the yacht club. But I also really got involved in snow skiing. Snow skiing was like the it sport right at that time, I think. And there was a group of kids at Parkside that we started a club called the Ragtime Rangers Ski Club. And so we did some ski trips, but mostly we met at Wilmot Mountain and skied there all the time.
Okay. And then how did you get involved as an instructor?
So the Chicago Tribune had a deal with Wilmot Mountain with their subscribers, or it was a subscriber promotion, and they had a deal where if you subscribed to the newspaper for a year, you could get a free lesson and rental at Wilmot Mountain. And that was such a successful promotion that the ski school came and tapped us Ragtime Rangers Ski Club kids and said, hey, we need some help teaching all these kids, these people that are coming out. And so they deputized us to be ski instructors.
And how long did you do that?
So that was just a one winter promotion. I think I was a sophomore at Parkside when we did that. And so when that promotion was over, I became a regular Wilmot Ski School instructor. Okay. That was a great way to ski for free.
Okay. And then after your 2.5 years at Parkside and the semester off, what did you do?
Well, while I was still at Parkside, I had a small Opel Kadett car that wasn't very, didn't have a lot of power in it. So when you put a roof rack on the car, it wouldn't go the speed limit. So I kept thinking of a way to more aerodynamically carry my skis on the car because they were too long to fit into the car. And so I came up with a ski rack that hung on the car window like a drive-in restaurant tray. Carried your skis right along the side of the car. And that turned out to work pretty well. It was more aerodynamic. And so I made one for myself, and every time I stopped at a gas station while I was using it, or stopped in the ski hill, somebody would say, hey, where'd you get that? But I was just a student, so I didn't really think much of it, you know. I was still just a young man with not a lot of direction. But then when I went to UW-Madison, I came back at the winter break, and I taught a couple how to ski on New Year's Eve. And when the lesson was over, they invited me into the lodge to have a drink with them. And while we were talking, I discovered that the guy was a patent attorney. So I said, I've got an idea that people say I should do something with. And I went out in my car and got the ski rack and brought it in. And he thought it was a good idea, and he became my patent attorney.
And what happened with the filing for the patent?
So we did the filing for the patent. Today, when you file a patent, the patent attorney, the patent office will give most anybody a patent, even if there's another one out there with a small variation, and then let the two parties fight it out in court if they so choose. Well, back then, before computers and everything, the patent office did all that research, and they actually rejected my patent offer because there was somebody who made a ladder rack to carry ladders on the side of a car, not on the top of the window, but on the side of the car. And so they said that my idea wasn't original.
Okay, so what did you decide to do with it after that?
So I was at UW-Madison, and I had a marketing class. the professor's assignment was to create a marketing campaign for a product, and he was intending that we picked Scope mouthwash or Crest toothpaste and made a marketing campaign. So I had to convince him that I had this new product that didn't exist yet. Could we make a marketing campaign for that? And I succeeded in that. So there was a group of 5 or 6 other students, and we all created a marketing campaign for this product, and we named it the Ski Hiker, because you could hitchhike with the skis because of that. We went to Devil's Head Ski Area and Cascade Mountain, and we did some, we sat in the parking lot with the product and asked passersby, asked skiers what they thought of the product, and we had overwhelming interest in it. We also had a little ski show. Skiing was very popular, that it was like the thing. And so we had a ski show at UW-Madison, and Billy Kidd, who was a downhill racer at the time, I think he was even in the Olympics just before that, he was the main draw, or one of the draws to the ski show. And so I looked him up, and I showed him my ski rack, and he wrote me some letters to some other ski rack manufacturers to see if they may want to manufacture it. I got rejected, you know. So I decided I had to do something on my own. And I didn't really do anything until the year after I graduated.
And when did you graduate?
I graduated in December of '73.
Okay. And what did you do after graduation?
So I really took that next semester off, or was intending to, and, you know, not really look for work maybe until May or June or something like that. So I was a Hoofers member. That's the outdoor club in Madison. They do sailing, skiing, kayaking, and I was hanging out in the offices there, answering the phone basically if I wasn't doing something else. And somebody called up from the Barnett Boat Company, which is a Kenosha company, and asked to post an advertisement for somebody to come down and work for the company to teach their dealers how to teach sailing. And so I just posted the job on the board and never thought much more about it. And it turns out about once a month, the guy from Barnett Boat Company, Dave Swanson, would call up and say, gee, nobody's applied for the job. Is the card still up there? And I would say, yes, it's up there. Well, anyway, I got to know Dave, because I think I talked to him 3 different times over the phone about it. And Dave said, well, you sound like a good candidate for it. Why don't you come down? And I really hadn't thought about coming back to Kenosha. Not that I disliked it. I just thought, well, you know, I think like most of us back then, we were looking for excitement, or, you know, bigger cities. And I thought I would get a job in an advertising agency or something like that, and work in Chicago or someplace, you know. So I really hadn't thought about coming back to Kenosha, but I came and I interviewed with him and decided it might be a fun job to do.
And what was the job?
The job was to write a manual, to make a manual about how to sail the Butterfly. And then I was to go to their dealers and teach their dealers how to teach sailing so that they could sail more boats. And we set up a trailer with, I think it carries 6 sailboats, and we set up an itinerary to go along the southern part of the country. And we did a couple of dry runs in Michigan, and everything went pretty good. It was.
What year was this?
Well, that would have been in the fall of '73. And one day, I think we were about a week or so away from starting the tour, and the owner of the company called me in and said, I got cold feet, the economy seems not to be right, and we're not going to do it.
So where did that leave you?
Well, I had an apartment in Kenosha with a 12-month lease, and it's about 6 months left, and he offered me a job to help him ship the boats, and I did that for about 2 weeks and said, I don't really want to do this. And so I went to work for Mack White Company. I went to work for American Motors.
Okay.
Just as a lineman. And I stayed there for about 3 months before they went on strike. And I hadn't joined the union yet. And so I was kind of like, you're on your own, you know. And so then I was available, and I was regularly sailing at the yacht club. So I knew some people that were in industry in the community. And I actually did a lot of crewing with Bob Cornog, who at the time was an engineer at Mack White Company. So he put a good word for me, and I got a job in the sales department at Mack White Company.
Okay. So you worked there for how long?
I worked there till the fall of '79.
Okay. And then what happened in the fall of '79 or shortly before that made you go in a different direction?
Yeah, so we have to back up. That summer, while I was working at Barnett Boat Company, I was also pursuing the idea of manufacturing the ski rack. And so I made a bunch of trips down to Chicago area to find manufacturers for the different parts. And I borrowed $5,000 from my father. And I made the first run of ski racks, which was 2,500 units. And we put those together all by ourselves. So while I was working at Mack White Company, I was then marketing the ski rack. So I think I got 3 weeks worth of vacation from Mack White. Then I would always take those 3 weeks at the time of the trade show in Las Vegas, the height of the winter. And so I was doing that. I was selling the ski rack at the same time I was working at Mack White Company.
Okay. And did something else happen that made you investigate another sport?
Yes. So I had a small sailboat called the Thistle, which is a 17-foot trailable sailboat, and my friends and I would go and travel from city to city, and about every other week in the summertime, camp, and then race the sailboats at a regatta. We'd go to Peoria, Illinois, Sturgeon Bay, Toledo. And anyway, we were at Carlisle, Illinois, on Lake Carlisle. And I think this was 1978. It got too windy for the sailboat race. And so all of a sudden, a few guys pulled out windsurfing equipment, and we're out windsurfing. And I told my girlfriend at the time, who was now my wife, I said, we're going to do that. And I didn't try it that day or anything, but I just, it was in the back of my head that, boy, this windsurfing is something that's pretty cool. You can do it yourself. You don't need a crew or anything like that. It's in some ways more portable and more exciting than sailing a sailboat.
Well, did you take any of your ideas to a trade show?
Yes. So actually, my first trade show, I was 25. I was 24. 1975, I went to the ski trade show in Las Vegas. And this is where all the ski companies around the world came to show their products to the dealers. And I actually shared a little 10 by 10 booth with another guy who was starting a cross-country ski company. And the ski rack was very well accepted there. Even though I had no props like a car or anything like that, I was able to find 5 or 6 reps to represent the product around the country. And it was very successful. Well, in the next trade show in 1979, after I'd seen the windsurfing, it just happened that the guy across the aisle from us was Windsurfing International. They had a double booth with their windsurf boards in there, and the way a trade show works, you get to know your neighbors pretty good. And I was always over there watching the videos and talking to them, and I said to him, I said, so what are you guys going to do with these products when the show's over? He said, well, we're going to sell them to somebody. So I ended up being the buyer. I had driven out there with a van, so I tied them all to the roof of the van and drove home with those, and that was March of 1979.
Okay. So did he make you any offer of like, okay, you just buy them and get them off my hands? Did he say, let's see what happens if you don't like what's going on?
No, nothing like that. He just, as far as he was concerned, I was just a buyer.
Okay.
And
all right, so you have these windsurfing boards now, and you didn't know how to use them yet. You just bought them.
no, so this was March, and April, it just happened to be April 1st. It was a Sunday, and it was pretty nice. It probably was the first day they got over 70 or something, you know. And I called up my cousin and another guy who had a house out on Center Lake, and I said, let's go and try to learn these things. And so we didn't have wetsuits back then. We didn't fall off. The water was pretty cold, or we didn't fall off too often, but we taught ourselves how to sail out and get back that afternoon. And so I didn't do a whole lot with them that summer because I was still working.
Okay.
But we played with them. And then I quit Mack White Company at the end of late in 79, I think it was October of 79, mostly, well, to pursue my ski rack more. The year before in 78, we had the blizzard of 78. If you're a longtime Kenoshan, you remember the streets were about 4 foot of snow. So anyway, that kind of kicked off the ski season a little bit. It was good for business, and ski racks were selling well, so I thought I could pursue my wholesale business better if I wasn't working, and I figured I had enough volume of business that I could do that.
So how well did the ski rack sell?
So at that time, I was probably selling about 8,000 to 10,000 of them a year. It wasn't a really high-priced product. It sold for like $15 a copy, at wholesale. But it was enough to take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then in that summer of 1980, I realized, gee, there's not much skiing going on in the summertime. I need something to do, so I started teaching windsurfing.
Okay. And when did you decide you needed a storefront?
So April of 1981, we actually opened a storefront.
Okay, and where was it?
It was in the downstairs of what was the Common Grounds at the time. I don't even know if they were there yet. I think the visiting nurses were just there. Yeah. But the building where Anna's is now, we were there for 3 summers then.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then you needed more space or a bigger place or a different location?
I guess we were only there for 2 summers, and then we needed a bigger location, and we decided we want to stay around. My wife was working at Mack White Company, and we were busy enough with the wholesale business that she decided she could just run the office of the wholesale business. And we decided that the windsurfing thing was strong enough that we could have a store. And so we moved up to Uptown.
How long were you there?
So I think we moved into Uptown in '83, and we were there till '86 when we bought the current building, or the building on 75th Street that we were for.
And where was it on 75th Street?
30th Avenue and 75th Street.
Okay, and this was a much bigger place than the Uptown?
It was a much bigger place. I can't remember how big Uptown was, but this was a 7,500 square foot building, the former Wachowski's Lawn and Garden Center.
And so were you just doing windsurfing at that time?
No, while I was on Uptown, Natalie Troha came by one day and said, "You seem like you got a store that attracts the youth. You should start thinking about selling skateboarding. Then I wouldn't have to go to Milwaukee for my kid." And I think she probably told us that in August or something like that. And shortly thereafter, we were at a trade show in Chicago for windsurfing and water sports and stuff like that. And there was a guy with a booth there with skateboarding stuff. And so I started talking to him, and he had like a little starter package. I think it was $1,000, and it had enough equipment to put maybe 7 or 8 skateboards together. You know, however you wanted to do it. And he said, "Well, you buy this, and if you still have it at Thanksgiving, I'll buy it back from you." Well, I think between the time we brought it in mid-October till Thanksgiving, we reordered 3 times. And so it was a really good move.
All right, so now you have a ski rack to do your wholesale business.
Yep.
You had windsurfing. Now you just added skateboards. Did you expand even further into the sports area?
So one of the things about going to the trade show in Las Vegas every year is you got to see what was coming before it got there. You know, you remember this was before the internet or anything, so you actually had to physically probably meet people and see things. And so Jake Burton Snowboards, founder, it was a brand new company in 1977. And his business, his booth was just like 3 booths down from mine in the same hall. And so I got to know him his first year in business. And I recall that the ski press wasn't too impressed with snowboarding in 1977. And it probably wasn't a thing yet. But by 1983, we decided to carry snowboards also. And it just happened to be, I don't think Jake remembered that I met him that first time. But had I not signed up to be a Burton Snowboard representative at that time, a year later, I probably wouldn't have been able to get it.
Okay, now how did you find your employees?
So my first 2 employees, Jay Fote and John Weiss, were children of other people that had boats at the yacht club. And so we got to know them. I think they were about 15 years younger than me, but I was a young guy at the yacht club, and I got to know the young kids, and we had a juniors program that, you know, we taught them how to sail. And so anyway, I recognized that they were pretty sharp sailors, and they came to work for me because I was selling windsurfing equipment, and that excited them a lot.
And how long did they work for you?
I think Jay worked about 5 years, and John maybe a couple more. The interesting thing about that was they started working for me when they were 15, 16 years old. And they were working for me when they went to the UW Parkside. And in their first year, I got a call from Hoyle Schweitzer, who was the CEO, the inventor of the modern windsurfer. And he said, "Hey, Ralph," he says, "it's cold in Wisconsin. Why don't you come out to Maui and teach windsurfing for me in the wintertime?" And I said, "Well, I can't do that. I have a wife and a daughter. But I got these 2 young guys that would probably really jump at the idea." And that was Jay and John. And when I brought the idea up to them, Jay said, "Sign me up," you know, and he was on the phone to figure it all out right away. And interestingly, John Weiss says, I think my dad will kick my butt if I dropped out of college to do this. And so he was a little not sure he wanted to do it. Well, I happened to see his dad at a Christmas function at the yacht club, and I brought it up to his dad, and I said, do you know about this opportunity that your son has? And when I explained it to him, he went and found John. He says, I'll kick your butt if you don't do this. So anyway, the two guys went out to Maui to teach windsurfing for the windsurfing company. I think they were at the Kaanapali Hilton. And they stayed for 2 winters. And they were right there when windsurfing was going from just a one-board company to all of a sudden exploded. There were 20 companies making stuff. And so they were right at the right time.
And did they ever come back to work for you?
They both came back to finish their college, and they both worked for me for a while. Jay ended up transferring to Florida State University, Tallahassee, and John worked a few more years for me.
Who was your longest serving employee?
Probably John Berhani. So the interesting thing about John Berhani, John is, I think, a year younger than Jay and John. We used to call them the J team, the 3 of those guys. They hung out at the yacht club together, all kinds of shenanigans. But I think John Weiss says, well, maybe while we're in Maui, you should hire John Berhani. And so I called him up. He was working at, I think he was working at Big Boy. And so he came to work for me. And the interesting thing is John was determined to not let those guys in Maui get better at sailing than him. So he would be out sailing almost every day, even in the wintertime.
Okay, how about your relationships with them today?
I'm still friends with all of them today. John has passed away, John Berhani, but we were sailing buddies, and we still are.
Okay, when did you get into the bicycle business?
So when I bought the building in '86 on the old Wachowski property, it was too big for me. So I put half of it up for rent. And the first guy to come along was Marty Gauss, and he started Total Cyclery. He had formerly worked for Don Gill Bike Shop. And so he broke away from there and started Total Cyclery. And so he was my neighbor for 17 years, my renter. We had really good synergy as a businesses. And he wanted to retire in 2003. And I thought, as being the landlord, this is such a great synergy to the board shop. You know, why would I let this go away? Because who else would I rent to? You know, and so I ended up buying the bike business.
Okay.
In 2003.
Okay, so what kind of events, technology has affected the development and how your business evolved?
So when we started the store, basically, in 1981, there was no internet. There was mail order catalogs, and there were company catalogs, and there were events like trade shows or consumer shows that people could learn about it and stuff. But basically, people had to come into a store like mine and see what's going on. And that, of course, all changed in 2001 with the internet. But backtrack, we did a lot of, we were always, I think, on one hand, I'm just a regular guy who started a company, and it could have went a lot of different ways, but I was very lucky to hire some really passionate people about the different sports we had. I talked to you about the two, John and Jay, going to Maui and really learning windsurfing, coming back and sharing that knowledge here in Kenosha. I was very involved in sailing and windsurfing too, and I think that set me apart from a lot of the other windsurf shops in the area. I think there were 20 windsurf shops in 1983, within 50 miles of here. And most of those guys were just jumping on the bandwagon and selling product. They weren't necessarily
using the product.
Using the product, right, or teaching people. And we were holding regattas at Silver Lake. We did traveling events where 15, 20 customers and us would travel to Cape Hatteras or to the Dominican Republic, or the Columbia River Gorge, which is a popular place. So we were creating a community. And the same thing happened with skateboarding. We talked about how I got into skateboarding. Well, I'm not a skater. Some of the guys, I think John Berhani was a pretty good skateboarder. So we had some credibility. But there was a young guy named Mark Ellefson that went to school at Tremper. He was a real small guy. I think he was 15. And he kept coming around that spring after the first year of having skateboards. He'd say, "You need a skateboarder here working here. You need a skateboarder. I should be your skateboard guy." And so it was spring break was coming up, and I asked him. I said, "Well, why don't you come work for me during spring break and let's see if we like each other. If this could work out." And it just happened that Saturday of the first day of spring break, it was a beautiful day. And so he came into work there, and we, I think, sold 13 whole setups that day. So that was a solid day. And he's like, "Oh wow, this is gonna be work." But he ended up staying with me, I think till he was 21. And John Berhani worked with me from the time he was, let's say, 18 till 29, and probably just because he was like a ski bum. He never went to school the whole year. He would go the first semester, and then he'd drop out and go out west and ski. And so it took him until he was 29 to graduate. Well, he started taking Mark out to Colorado with him. And Mark, I think after the third winter of going out there, decided he's not coming home.
Oh.
And settled in Salt Lake City, so he could be at Snowbird. So
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So I was very fortunate to have some very good and passionate people working for me.
And how did these various sports, they seem to come up a tiny bit slow and then blossom, explode. Did these explosions of these sports last?
Yeah, so we all know skiing's still a big thing. I think snowboarding kind of came up. Younger kids were bored of doing what their dad did maybe, and they wanted to do something else. And because skateboarding was a thing, snowboarding is really a lot like skateboarding. You're sideways on the board. It's a lot like surfing. And so it became, surfers could do the same thing they were doing in the winter now on a mountain with gravity. Skateboarders also. So for a while, snowboarding was the counterculture of skiing. In fact, some ski areas wouldn't allow snowboarding at all. But it really grew into its own thing.
And all those things still very popular today?
Yes. Skateboarding seems to be in a waning period right at the moment. I'm not sure why. Maybe video games or something. But in the 40 years that we sold skateboarding, we saw that a few times, that it would be up and down.
Okay, what happened during COVID?
COVID was a very incredible boom for the bike business. I think when they closed up the gyms, people were staying home and working from home. they couldn't go out to eat, all of a sudden they turned to bicycling as something they could do. And we were very lucky that in the state of Wisconsin, I think most of the country, they deemed us an essential business so we could stay open.
So after COVID, were you still selling skateboards and snowboards and windsurfing equipment, or was that just bikes?
Yeah, so we got to go back up a little bit to the time of the internet. Go back around to what you said about how things changed. So, probably by 2004 or 2005, the internet was really changing the way the whole world in retail worked. Because prior to the internet, you had to come and see me in my store to see what was going on, or see some store, or be traveled, and then after the internet, people could find it on the internet, and oftentimes new products were introduced on the internet before they were introduced to dealers. And I think the manufacturers even didn't know exactly how retailers fit into their overall marketing thing. Some manufacturers started competing with us on the internet. And so it was a very tumultuous time. And I think also, if you recall back then, an internet sale could be done without sales tax being collected. And when you're selling a $3,000 windsurfing package or a $1,000 snowboard package, that really made a difference. People actually would come in to find out what they should buy, and then they'd go and buy it somewhere else so they didn't have to pay the sales tax. And then the other thing that kind of came, Kenosha-wise anyway, is the outlet malls became a real thing.
And how did that affect you?
So we were really big. Most people probably wouldn't even realize that there was such a thing as a skate shoe. But skate boarders had their own shoe styles that had extra amounts of leather on the side here so that it wouldn't wear out real quick. And they became a fashion statement. And we were the guys in Kenosha anyway, to sell skate shoes. And that business just about completely went away once the internet and the outlet mall stores came. And then winter clothing. We used to do a ton of winter clothing because we were selling snowboards. We were selling the snowboard look. We were selling warm clothes so you could go out. And the outlet mall, the North Faces and the Helly Hansons and the Nike outlet mall, they always had something lower, and then the internet, changed those things. So by 2019, it was very difficult to continue on those sports that were really affected by the internet.
Okay.
And so we stopped selling snowboards in 2019. And we stopped selling windsurfing equipment, but that was a little different. Kiteboarding had kind of come up as the new adrenaline sport, and it was stealing the young windsurfers away, and the old windsurfers were aging out. And kiteboarding is a much more compact thing that's easily to ship in a box on the, on the internet. And we did sell kiting until like 2010, and it already became an internet thing, so we weren't really involved in kiting anymore. But windsurfing, by 2019, people were just aging out.
So after COVID, what started happening to the bike business?
So the bike business was very, very good during the COVID time. It was probably almost double for most people. It was, for us, it was because I guess I'd been in it long enough. I had the connections or whatever to get product. So whereas some bike shops were completely out of product, I was chasing around or thinking 2 months in advance and making sure I had product coming in. And so we had a very strong season. But the bike manufacturers didn't quite know how to turn the spigot off, you know. And so they made too much product in 2022, and a lot of that 22 product was still around in 2023, but they still made too much product in 2023. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff on sale, which made it tough to be a retailer.
Okay.
In fact, I would say the bike business probably won't recover for a couple more years.
So when did you decide to close up your business?
Well, I was thinking about it in 2019. I had put the building up for sale with Pitt Brothers, and I've been looking around for people to continue on. You know, I had two options. To me, I could find somebody that would want to run the business. In 2021, I was 70. So I was looking for somebody to take over the business or to buy the building and do what they want with it. Mostly just because I still could do it. I still enjoyed it, but you know, it was hard to find good staff and keep it going all the time. I had a real sharp guy, Tony Looney, that worked for me for 22 years. Well, I inherited him from the original owner of the bike shop, and he was a very hard worker. And we were trying to find a way for him to buy the business. And one day he came to me and said him and his wife didn't want to own anything, and shortly thereafter he took a job with the school system. He had raised an autistic son, and the school system liked what he did and hired him to help with the autistic kids. So,
Okay, so you're still looking for a buyer at that time.
yes, and
Did you find one?
so I did find one. So we went through this process of starting to sell the business, and I guess I was a little bit naive. But in today's world, when you sell a business, the buyer's bank requires a clean bill of health on the property. And when I bought the building in '86, there was no such thing. But it turns out, in the early '60s, the gas station closed in 1963. There was a gas station on the parking lot. Well, the gentleman who closed the gas station took the tanks out of the ground, but the DNR didn't even exist. Well, the DNR probably existed, but not the EPA's rules. And the EPA didn't have a procedure for closing a gas station in 1963. So the bottom line is, in 2023, for me to sell the building, I had to bring the property up to the code of today. And that involved a bunch of boring in the ground to discover whether there was any petroleum left over. And they found a very small amount. And so once they find that small amount, you become a brownfield in the DNR's vernacular. And it's quite involved to get through that. So we had to go through that process. And another thing they did is, you know how they do a radon test in homes? Well, they do the same thing in a business. And they didn't find radon gas, they found trichloroethylene. And trichloroethylene for 100 years was used as an anesthesia. But now it's considered a very dangerous product, probably causes cancer. Well, it turns out that the previous bike shop was using a product called PowerSol by Zepp, and it was like 95% trichloroethylene, and it's a degreaser. If you hear about Camp Lejeune, that was trichloroethylene in the water supply. So anyway, we had to put a radon type system in the building to mitigate the the fumes from the trichloroethylene underneath the building. And so that took until March of 2025 to get through the DNR's system. And so then this summer, or shortly after March of 2025, we were able to find a buyer for the building.
Well, looking back on all of this time, how do you reflect on your time from your ski rack idea all the way to today?
Well, you know, I would say that the ski hiker kind of set my direction of being in business for myself. And once I decided to go into business for myself and leave Mac White and do that, these other opportunities that came along, like the windsurfing and then the skateboarding and snowboarding, were just an extension of being in business for myself. And I was very fortunate that the ski rack was successful enough to fund the other activities and to build the business into the business that it became over how many years? 44 years.
And you said you wanted to have a store. You wanted to be in Kenosha. What has it being in Kenosha meant to you?
Well, I probably couldn't have done a lot of the things that we did in a bigger city or a different city. I think that the city of Kenosha was a really good springboard for our ideas. We were very well accepted in the community, and I've had a lot of good, passionate employees, and I was very fortunate to be able to do what I wanted to do for the last 44 years.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.